Hello, everyone, and welcome into this special edition roundtable with President Capuano. I'm Elizabeth Scalzo, the editor-in-chief for the Fairleigh Dickinson University Metropolitan Campus newspaper, The Equinox. I also have our news editor, Joanna Marino Martinez, with us today. So good morning, President Capuano. Thank you for meeting with us this morning.
Good morning. Nice to see you.
I would like to start off by asking, as the leader of our campus community, what is the most important thing you'd like students to know about the decision-making process for this continuously changing time for our community?
Well, the most important thing, Elizabeth, and it has been from day one and it will always be, is the health and safety of everyone in our community. So we have to ensure that no matter what we do, that we are maximizing the health and safety of our community, and that means minimizing risk with respect to COVID-19 and other things, frankly, to the best of our ability. Now, we know we can't reduce risk to zero. That's impossible. But everything we do is focused on mitigating and minimizing risk to every extent possible.
Absolutely. In our last interview, we spoke about you visiting both of the New Jersey campuses over this time. Have you been visiting more since we last spoke? And because I know that there are a lot of people that have been coming back from furloughs and that sort of thing.
So yes, I do drive by and actually into and go into the offices fairly regularly. I will be again tomorrow. Namely, to this point, I've been checking just to make sure that some of the few capital projects that we have that are still going on are proceeding as planned, but also just to check to see, what the campuses look like, because to this point there hasn't been, other than public safety, nobody's really been on campus. I do go into my offices on occasion because I need to get some files that I don't have access to on my computer, but mostly just to check. And you're right, beginning yesterday, people did start coming back to campus. We're bringing back very slowly more staff, and will be over the next 3 weeks. But I know one of our vice presidents for enrollment planning and effectiveness, Dr. Schulteis, he was back on campus, on the Metro campus yesterday, and I think he's going to be at Florham today. So gradually you'll start to see people returning, because with the hope of bringing students back beginning September 4th, obviously we need to have staff in place that will be involved in providing services. So students can expect to see me on campus. I said yesterday in a senior team meeting that I think it's important that people see the president on campus on a regular basis. My schedule is crazy because I'm always going, somewhere. But I'm going to do my best to make sure that I go out and walk around the campuses more than I normally do, which I enjoy doing, just so people can see that I'm on campus, and if I'm on campus walking around with a mask on, it's safe, and it's okay for you to be doing the same. As long as everybody follows the guidelines, 6 feet, sanitize your hands as regularly as possible, and wear a mask at all times, we're going to be reducing risk significantly. So I want people to understand that, and want them to think that I'm not asking them to do anything differently than I will be doing myself.
Absolutely. So you had sent out the email with the president's announcement yesterday and spoke about the fact that New Jersey is still in phase 2 of reopening. And we actually just recently posted a story about the rate of transmission and how it's been fluctuating in New Jersey. So how did those two components combined really help finalize the decision made in yesterday's announcement to move most courses remotely?
Very good question. So this is something that's been eating at me for a long time now. And I'm very, very involved in decisions that are meetings at the state level, and trying to have as much influence as I can on what we can and can't do in higher education. Every day I have meetings about this. So unfortunately, we haven't gotten to stage 3. You're right. Although more recently, the transmission rate has been declining, so that's good news. But that wasn't the case last week. I should say, actually wasn't the case the prior week, the previous week, and into last week, the beginning of last week. Last week, it started to come down again. but the previous week it was going up, and it actually had gotten almost a 1.5, the transmission rate, which actually was higher than any point since May. So that was concerning. So much so that the governor, not only hit the pause button, but he reimposed some restrictions in terms of indoor gatherings, not to exceed 25% of room capacity and not more than 25 people, even if the room could accommodate more than that. So I think some of this was created by the fact that there were some, what he likes to call super spreader sites had evolved in terms of people having these large house parties at which a lot of people were exposed and became infected, and that was his reason for imposing those restrictions again. But nevertheless, it prevented us from getting to stage 3, which I can tell you every college and university president in New Jersey was praying we would get to by now, but we haven't gotten there. I know, as do others, that the governor's going to be very careful. He's not going to allow people to open up just because he knows we want to. The situation has to be right. So my sense is, in getting to where we are now, that we're not going to get to stage 3 this week or next week even, I don't believe, which is when we anticipated at one point reopening and letting people come back to campus. I knew that several weeks ago, which is why, we postponed the return, delayed the return until September 4th in terms of resident students. But now, based on all the data I'm seeing, my sense is for most of August, if not all of August, we're going to remain in stage 2. We're days away from being most of August because what's today, August 11th already? So in a few days, we'll be most of August. And I think it's not going to happen before we get to early September if everything goes well. So we really had to make a decision because I know people are struggling with all the uncertainty, and sometimes, even though it wasn't the decision people wanted, me to make, you have to have closure at some point, some clarity. So we figured our hands are tied right now. So we really, for the benefit of the students and the faculty, namely, we have to make a decision. So that's why we made the decision yesterday. And you're going to see most institutions are going to be making similar decisions, and some have already, just because we've gotten to a point where we have no more wiggle room, and it's not fair to people to say, we're going to keep waiting. We're going to keep waiting. It's gotten beyond that now, so.
100%. So Joanna has a few questions to ask regarding the student body and what our student body is going to look like this fall semester as far as residents and commuters, along with some student activity questions.
Hello and thank you. To start off, approximately how many resident and commuter students are you expecting at FDU for the fall?
So I asked the same question myself last week, and you may have seen that there's a survey going around, right? That was me that said, I told the campus executives, let's find out how many actually, if we end up going mostly or fully remote, if we allow students to come back to the dorms, how many are even interested in coming back? Because you can imagine, running universities like running a business. If only 5 students wanted to come back, we're not going to commit all the resources we would need to commit to have 5 students on campus. So at this point, we still don't know. Our campus executives, we know based on the survey, and I'm just trying to recall, we only got so far about 55% responses on the survey. On each campus, it was about the same. So that means, and we were only surveying the students that had committed, as resident students already. They said they were coming back. So only about half, maybe 60% have responded to this point. And so the rest of it's speculation. But I think as of yesterday, at Metro, we had about 300 that said that they would come back. And at Florham, we had maybe closer to 400. But the campus executives were projecting at Florham, it could be as high as 600-800. And maybe at Metro, it would be around 400. So we'll see. As I announced yesterday, we in effect have to tear up the old housing agreement and start over because we have all these now COVID-19 conditions, and people will have to, decide, am I coming back or not? Am I not coming back? And maybe some people will say, well, if I'm going to be fully remote, I'm not coming back. So I hope in the next week or so we'll have better numbers in terms of knowing exactly how many are coming back. But if you believe what the campus executives are saying, and they're on the ground, they know better than anyone, we expect to have hundreds on each campus. You know, maybe 300 or 400 at Metro, maybe 600 or 700 at Florham, which has more residential students than Metro does. So that's where we're at right now. We don't have a firm number just yet.
Okay, and I know that you mentioned in your recent update that student life and activities will be fully virtual. So actually, do you have any plans in the works to fully engage the entire FDU community for events that normally happen, like the organization fair?
So some of that still has to be worked out. I don't anticipate that everything will be virtual. In fact, what we're going to try to do is do outdoors some things on campus. Obviously, it's going to be limited for reasons that are beyond our control. We can only do so much in stage 2. If we get to stage 3, perhaps we can do more. But we're free to do more things outside, as you know, as long as everybody stays 6 feet apart and they have masks on. And usually September and October, we get weather that, you know, allows us to do things outside. It's not going to be freezing cold, and maybe even on some days too hot. But we're going to try to arrange for as much of that as possible. But we're going to be providing a new virtual platform. I think you saw this in the communication that will allow, you know, gatherings to take place virtually, so students can have meetings and clubs can have interaction as well. And more information will be provided on that, hopefully soon. Dr. Schulteis, who is overseeing all of student engagement, he and his team are working on that. So more information on that will be coming. But I think you're right, Joanna. Obviously, most of the interaction is going to be virtual, not just classes, but even what we do beyond classes. But we do, especially for students who will be residing on campuses, I've been very clear about saying, it's not going to be as if everything's going to be closed except the dormitories. We're going to open computer labs. In fact, we just got some new guidance just this morning, last night, from the state. Under stage 2, we weren't supposed to open computer labs, but now the governor is allowing us to open computer labs, and he's not doing 25%. He's saying as long as you distance and you have masks on, you can put as many people in the room as 6 feet between computers allows. So that'll depend on how large the room is and how many computers are in there. I think we're expecting some guidance. We're hoping that maybe in the student centers, not dining. Dining, you have to take your mask off to eat, so there's not going to be any indoor dining in facilities. You can come in and pick the food up and bring it back to your dorm room, or you can go outside and sit at a picnic table and eat, but you can't eat indoors. But we're hoping, if he allows us under stage 2, to open up the student centers, and as long as everybody has a mask on and we stay 6 feet apart, maybe we can do some clubs and things like that in there. But that's coming. We don't have that guidance yet, but we're waiting hopefully this week to see that. So I think in the end, we're going to try to balance everything as best we can. You know, we want there to be things on campus, but we need to make sure we do it safely. We don't want to take any risks in doing it, and we can't violate the law. If the executive order is this is what you're permitted to do, then so be it. That's what we're going to be permitted to do. But it'll be mostly virtual, but hopefully as we go forward, more and more will be on campus. Although I don't want to mislead you, we're not going to reopen the campuses this fall in the way that people had hoped. It's just not going to happen. Once you make a decision to go virtual, and students who live farther away decide, well, I'm not coming to the dorm, you can't just switch to on campus and say to them, hey, you got to come back now. It's just not possible. So everybody has to understand that.
Of course, of course. A few students reached out to us asking if the campus is able to reopen. So hypothetically, what would be the tipping point of COVID cases before the university will have to go fully online?
To go fully online?
Yeah.
Well, right now, for all intents and purposes, we're almost fully online. We're mostly online. Some people for most students, it's going to be fully remote. I want to be clear, though. When we say fully online, we need to distinguish between courses that are already fully online, which in many instances are what we call asynchronous. There's no face-to-face meetings occurring, even using technology like Zoom, right? Most of our hybrid courses, what we intended to be hybrid, that would have half the class sitting in person and half on Zoom, will now be entirely on Zoom. So that's what when we say online, there'll still be meetings. So if you have a class on Monday and Thursday from 10 to 11:15, that class is still going to meet, except it won't be in person. It'll be on the computer. So there's going to be a lot of that going on. That's part of fully online. And then there will be the courses that were intended to be fully online. And you may have some of those as students in your schedule already. I don't know. So I think for most students, because there will be very limited courses that are going to be in person, it'll be like in nursing. And the rule we've been giving is if you can't do it online, you can't do it remotely, then you can do it in person. Well, that's most courses that can't be done in person. There's only a handful that can be done, that have to be done in person. So I don't think at this point we're going to be adding a lot of in-person courses, even if we get to stage 3. And I'll just be honest with you. I'll tell you why. Because I got at least 40 emails last night from students and parents saying, well, if we make a decision not to come back to the dorms, we hope that on September 14th now you don't tell us that all these courses are going to be fully in person, because we live 140 miles away. How are we going to get to class then when we're not in the dormitory? So this is going to be problematic. I think right now for the fall, we're just going to have to accept the fact that most things will continue to be fully online, fully remote or online, as I've just described. And it's just, those are the circumstances. It's the way it's going to have to be. Hopefully when we get to the spring, that'll be the start of the spring semester, will be end of January, early February. Let's all hope things improve dramatically and we can get back to business as we'd like, where campuses reopen. I have a hunch there's still going to be a lot of rules in place even then, with masks and things of this nature. But if there's still cases around and we don't have good therapeutics or the vaccines haven't been widely distributed, that's probably, this year is going to be a tough year for everybody, no matter whether you're in school or not. It's not going to be business as usual until we have vaccines. And that's probably, there's some promising prospects right now as far as vaccines, but I think you're not going to see them widely distributed probably until we get into the middle of the spring term, maybe late spring. So we're going to just have to, go along as we have been.
Yeah. As an out-of-state student, I completely understand where all those people are coming from with going back to the dorms and everything.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to tell people in September, now you got to come back now. I mean, obviously that wouldn't be fair.
So you had mentioned in your email about hearing concerns from different faculty members and professors. So FDU is known for having a lot of adjunct professors. What are the numbers looking like for the fall semester for adjuncts versus tenured professors?
So fewer adjuncts, because what we've done, one of the things that Provost has done is everybody's tightening their belts, including the faculty are making very important contributions. Many of the tenured faculty get release time to do research, but fewer of them will be getting, actually none of them, tenured faculty, will be getting release time. They've given up their release time, which means they'll be teaching more courses. So when you put it all together, significantly more courses will be covered by full-time faculty than is normally the case, which means we will need fewer adjuncts. Plus, we've also tried to reduce the number of sections of certain courses, because if we're not in a classroom, we don't have the same restrictions as we would have in a classroom. So with fewer sections and more tenured faculty teaching, there will actually be fewer adjuncts this fall than what you would normally have.
Okay, and then as far as the adjuncts go, what exactly are the protections being put into place and sort of equipment? A lot of them, I was reached out to specifically by someone from the art department. I did a story on how difficult it would be to teach online. So what kind of resources have they been given as far as teaching online, just in general, not just for the art department, and also training throughout this difficult time?
So we made significant investments in educational technology in our classrooms, hoping that we would get to stage 3, which means we would have had more in person, but also knowing we couldn't put everybody back in a class. We had to do this A-B hybrid model, right? What they call high flex. So we made a lot of investment in order to do that. And we bought, millions of dollars of equipment to create what we call Zoom rooms, so that the classroom would have had multiple cameras in. They actually do. I mean, we still have the technology. We may have to use it in the spring, actually, when we are in stage 3, right? But this would allow a student actually, even if they were participating remotely, not to just see the professor, but to actually see the class at the same time, and be more able to engage, participate in what's going on. So unfortunately, right now, we can't use that technology because the professor is not going to be in the room, nor will any other students be in the room since it will be remote. But many faculty, over 200, I was told, went through a series of instructional workshops this summer to enhance their online courses. And they were taught all the best practices in online instruction. Many of whom didn't have that training prior to this because they had never taught online before. So we had to force everybody to go online in the spring, and we didn't have time to do all this training. But all summer long now, we've done this training, and we've provided faculty with additional tools and technology that is all designed to enhance the educational experience that's going to be delivered remotely. Not in an asynchronous course, in a synchronous course. So I hope many of those faculty now have the tools that they didn't have in the spring. They have those tools now. And you will see it as students. It'll be reflected in the courses you'll be taking this fall, which should be significantly, better. They were good, and I know in many cases, but better in all cases than they were in the spring. So a lot of time was spent on that this summer, getting ready, because we knew what to anticipate going into the fall. We didn't know that in the spring. We were told, on a Tuesday, you're not coming back on Monday, that kind of thing, right?
And then we do have a lot of essential workers on our campus. You mentioned public safety, and then also when people start to return, there are going to be the cleaning staff. So what kind of support is being offered to those people to assure that they are doing the best practices to keep themselves and their family members at home safe?
So like the students, like everybody else, including me, they have to follow the guidelines no matter what. So they will have masks on at all times. You're going to probably see them with gloves on too, because they're going to be cleaning surfaces. So they're going to be even more careful. We're going to be doing testing on campus. We've made a lot of investments in testing, and I've gotten, my background is in biochemistry, and I'm a biopsychologist, so I've gotten personally involved in developing the testing protocols. We purchased, we're one of few universities going to be able to do testing right on campus. Not only an antigen test, but also a molecular test. We bought 12 analyzers, 6 for each campus, to do what's called the BD Veritor test. Gives you the results in 15 minutes. I don't like this fact that you got to wait 3 days to get the results. For me, that's too long, because if somebody's infected, they may go around and infect 100 people before I even get the results back. So we have an antigen test that gives us the result in 15 minutes, and we have a molecular test that we're going to use to test false negatives on the BD Veritor test, gives us an answer in 25 minutes. So we'll know relatively quickly if people are infected. Then we'll be able to isolate them and then contact trace. And if everybody's doing their job, which is to stay 6 feet away, the contact tracing will be easy, because people should be saying the only person I was close to within 6 feet without a mask was my roommate, not 10 other people. If it's 10 other people, you're not following the rules, and you may be expelled from the dorms, asked to leave if you're not following the rules. So, because again, I'm not joking about this. Our health and safety is going to be the priority. So there's not going to be like you get 3 chances. You get 1 chance. You make a mistake, you're gone. Especially if it was done intentionally, willfully, and you do something that you should not have done, you won't be in the dorms, because we're not going to take that chance. And we're going to read, and anything you can do to make that clear, you got to make it clear. No tolerance when it comes to this stuff. We can't take it when it comes to health.
Sorry, I've seen a lot of universities who are actually putting it like in their integrity policies, along with like plagiarism and cheating on tests, that you have to.
And our new dorm policy will have this in it. It's got all of this in there right away. 1 strike and you're out.
So Joanna,
I'm not saying if somebody makes an honest mistake. I'm talking about somebody knows the rule and you intentionally, or you thought you could get away with it, you broke the rule. Well, guess what? You're going home.
Yeah. So Joanna has a few questions revolving around financials, and then we will wrap this up. I would like to once again thank you for your time this morning.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, so how will the cancellation of fall sports this fall affect the budget for athletics and scholarships for current and incoming student athletes?
So the scholarships won't change. We're not removing scholarships. The budget will be, and listen, the entire university budget is going to change because when you have less revenue due to declining enrollment, our primary revenue comes from students who are enrolled. So, I mean, all schools are seeing less enrollment for obvious reasons. That means you have to adjust your expenses accordingly. So everybody's budget's going to be reduced. Athletics will be reduced simply by the fact that they're not going to be competing. So there's no competition. So no travel and no expenses related to going to other schools to play. So that's a big part of their budget will be reduced accordingly, won't be necessary. At this time, we still plan to do student athlete engagement. That's evolving, I should tell you. There was some guidance, not official yet, but the NCAA is now talking about something like if student athletes become infected, the universities might have to pay their medical bills. And I'll tell you right now, if that's the case, that could lead to no athletics this fall because there are not many universities that are going to agree to pay a student's medical bills if they become infected. So let's see how that plays out. But and the truth is, if there's reduced athletic interaction, then we have already furloughed employees whose services are not necessary under a fully remote environment, and some of that's going to continue. And it's going to affect athletics. We won't need all the people in athletics necessarily. If you're operating in a situation where you're just doing practices or there's some student athletic engagement, you don't necessarily need to have everybody around, to work as they normally would. So in all those ways, everybody's budget's going to be affected. Same thing in my office, same thing. So it's sort of if it's remote. I mean, there's some people who work at the university, the only way they can do their jobs is if they're on campus and there are people on campus. Well, if there are fewer people on campus and they're not on campus, then their services are not able to be provided. We'll have to make the adjustments accordingly. All universities are doing these things all over the country.
All right, thank you. That was a big concern for student athletes.
Yeah, we're not taking, scholarships are not being taken away. No, you don't have to worry about that.
So with the anticipation of reopening, you mentioned in the plan before the investment of cleaning supplies to regularly sanitize, like wipes in every classroom, EPA sponsored products. But since the majority of campus spaces won't be used due to majority of classes being online, how has this helped deflect the cost for the university? Has it been less expensive?
Well, so many of those supplies, Joanna, we purchased them already, so we can't give them back. Usually when you buy medical supplies, it's not like something you buy, at Home Depot. You can't return it. So all the tests we bought to do testing, we're probably going to be doing less testing now because we're not going to have as many people going back and forth. But we'll keep all of that in our stock because I anticipate we're going to need it in the spring at some point. So it's good that we have it rather than we don't have it. So we're not going to be able to reduce expenses by returning things. We will be able to maybe reduce some expenses by not ordering things, going forward that we would have had to order. And maybe by the fact now we're not going to need to do as much cleaning of classrooms, as we would have. In fact, we're trying now to determine which buildings can we actually close to save money. If nobody's taking classes in a building, maybe we can consolidate, the buildings, all the activities into certain buildings and just open a few of the buildings, like the library, obviously, like the student center if we can, like the athletic center if possible, right? Like computer labs. We don't need to, and maybe if one classroom building where the science is, some of those hands-on courses are going to take place, and we just do courses in that building and close the other buildings down and not run the air conditioning units and stuff to try to save money that way. So yeah, we're going to be looking at all of this to try to consolidate. We don't need to have every building open with all the lights on and the AC running if nobody's in the building.
Absolutely. So one final question that we have it's not as related to COVID, but it was something that was a huge matter this summer with the social justice movement of Black Lives Matter. where is the institution as far as the diversity inclusion plans that were being made this summer, and what can we expect for the fall semester, especially with a lot of programming being done remotely and through virtual platforms?
So, and I'm being very honest with you. So, you know, the meetings we've had to this point. Since the last one, we haven't had another meeting yet because we've been so overwhelmed with this COVID business and what the state is doing and everything. We barely have had time to eat and sleep. So we haven't forgotten about it though, but it hasn't been the top priority right now. But we will go ahead with this this additional training that we've committed to. So human resources will be doing a lot of this training, most likely virtually, obviously in the fall, using the platforms that we have. So that for sure will go forward. I've continued to talk to the senior team about what we can do to put, if not create a full office, because again, we're not on campus, but to get somebody that's focused on leading our efforts with respect to diversity and inclusion, to actually somebody whose responsibility it is to develop this plan, you know, consulting with the rest of us. So I think in the next couple of weeks, certainly by the time let's say by the end of September, right, just to be safe, I would hope that we will have somebody designated, you know, to lead this effort, And it could very well be somebody that works for the university already, that would be given this additional responsibility or whose job will shift to focus more on this responsibility. So we have taken the feedback that we've received in the meetings, and a list of action items has been created. Not that we've made them yet part of the plan. We have to actually have a meeting that looks just at all those suggestions that were made and then consolidating them and coming up with maybe an outline that will be used to actually develop the plan. But this is not going away, so you don't have to worry about it. I can assure you it's not going to be like, you know, the last time something like this happened. There's a lot of talk and then, you know, 2 months later, nothing's changed, right? We will be making changes, but I just actually recognize we're in the midst of something else, you know, trying to get our campuses reopened. And, you know, it's hard to do a lot of the things you want to do when you're not even on campus. So there's only so much you can do, but we will be moving forward with that. You don't have to be concerned about it.
Yes, I imagine it's been an absolutely crazy summer for you and everyone who's been working for the campus, especially with the coronavirus and then also all these other things that you have on top of it. But thank you so much for meeting with us today. And for those who are watching this video, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and check out our other roundtable series.
Okay, thank you.